Hello, everybody. Welcome back once again to the Crew First Culture podcast. My name is Jeremy, and thank you for joining us today. Today, I have on as a guest Jonathan Brumley. How you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Pretty good, man. It,
Good.
it seems like your face and your name is everywhere. You seem like a very, very busy person, and that's definitely going to get into some of that. Some work and family balance and things like that. But before we do that, I know you've had a very interesting kind of career path, and you've been on several podcasts before, so you don't necessarily have to go into all of it, but it's an interesting story, and I know that it's taken you kind of around America to finally get back to where you wanted to be originally. So if you don't mind, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about that journey, and we'll get into it.
Yeah. So, like you said, I've talked about it a little bit before, but for those who aren't familiar, my name's Jonathan. I am 34 now. I look like I'm 15 still. So, for those watching on Zoom, you probably won't believe me when I say it. But yeah, I've been a firefighter now since 2008. I started as a volunteer here in Colorado, a small rural town north of the town that I grew up in. A town of about 15,000, and it was a combination department with about 80 members. Just gave me a phenomenal foundation for who I wanted to be as a firefighter, and just in giving me some foundational skills. The guys that I worked with up there were fantastic, and thankfully my journey has taken me back around to still be able to work with some of them even through all of my travels. So started as a volunteer here in Colorado, got my first career job in Nebraska, worked for a tiny department there of about 15 members in Scotts Bluff. Had some cool opportunities with that because we were the only paid department within about an hour radius of us. So we kind of became the jack of all trades and did a little bit of everything for everybody around us, including the volunteers in that area. And then that journey took me to Houston, Texas. I knew all along I wanted to be a big city firefighter. That bug bit me really early on. And through some connections that I had down there, some moves that family was going to be making along with us, I made the decision to test down there and got hired on my first go. I worked there for about 6 years on an engine company, a ladder, and an ambulance. It's Fire Station 26 on the southeast side there. About 4,000 runs a year out of the engine and the ambulance. So a busy house down there. But all along, going back to my days as a volunteer, there was a particular fire department that caught my attention. One that I was a little intimidated by at first, just due to the nature of it. But I made the decision to move back here to Denver, Colorado, to pursue being a firefighter here. Like you said, that was kind of the dream from day one. And through it all, my family has grown, and my family has been gracious enough to travel with me and come along with me on that journey. It's a huge blessing that I have the support of my wife through all of that, for sure.
So, did I understand you? Did you move back to Colorado before you had the job?
No, I moved once I got the job.
Okay.
So I wasn't actively looking to leave the Houston Fire Department. I love the day-to-day at the Houston Fire Department. I love the people that I was stationed with. We just had a camaraderie like very few are able to have. I was truly blessed in that situation. Unfortunately, there was a lot of outside circumstances influencing, especially politics in
Oh, yeah.
the Houston Fire Department, where it just became a struggle. It's not impossible by any means. There's so many amazing people down there still, and
Yeah.
I love the time that I was able to spend down there. In fact, I just got home last night at about 11 from being able to spend some time with friends down there. But the reality is it got me looking again, and I kind of made the decision that I would either work for the Houston Fire Department or the Denver Fire Department, and I made the choice to test up here and was hired. So
And how
that's that. It's pretty
how
awesome.
long have you been back in Colorado with Denver?
So I've been back just over 2 years now. I moved up
Okay.
here in January of 2020.
That is quite the
Excuse me,
journey. And
January 2019. Sorry.
I got you. No, you're right.
My dates are off.
The it's impressive, the route you've taken. And like I said, I know you've spoken this before, and and those have heard it. I hate to bring up kind of the same things, but it's just interesting. And what would you've talked about kind of what brought you to Houston, that big city bug. You talked about what brought you back to Denver, just wanting to come home, and that department that you were wanting to be at. What would you say it was just kind of all of this journey was to get back home? I mean, would you kind of looking back on it now, is that the main end goal the whole time?
I don't think it was, honestly, because when I moved down to Houston, I thought that was it for me.
Yeah.
And I would have been incredibly happy to just stay there through my entire career. And had it just been, considering tactics, just considering the call volume or the number of fires that I would have went to, that's enough in itself in that fire department. But as things progress, you realize that there's more to it than just that. I needed to take care of my family long term. I was having to work multiple jobs just due to the pay scale there, which I knew going in, so that wasn't a surprise or anything to me. But I found myself working 100-hour weeks on the regular, working for 2 different fire departments, doing some side jobs as well. And that was just to make ends meet. And as I was looking at things long term, I'm like, man, is this really how I want things to go for the next 10, 15, 20 years? And so I started to look, just to see what else was out there, to see if there could be an experience comparable to what I was getting at that fire station down in Houston. And I had a lot of conversations with mentors, a lot of conversations with people that work for the department that I'm at now, a lot of conversations with my family. And that's kind of what led me on the journey. And it's funny because I didn't know that I wanted to be a firefighter until I was pretty much graduating college. And so did I know stuff all along? No. And I'm just kind of open to the leading that I feel within myself and the leading that, I get from my family and from God as well on that.
The I think a big thing right there is just that family thing. And I don't want to jump the gun because I want to get into that probably mainly with this conversation, but to have the support of your family to go through that process is a great thing. And definitely kind of makes you realize, I'm sure, how much they are appreciated, and how great it is to have that support, I'm sure.
Absolutely. You couldn't do this without that support, they're such a huge part of my life, and something that I want to be a focus in my life for sure. And so for them to join me in this journey is just kind of icing on the cake. I get to do what I love, and I get to be with the people that I love as well through it all.
So you here recently, we just had Easter, and you posted a picture on Facebook at all girls, apparently. Is that
Yeah, I got
right?
a house full of girls, man. I'm
Yeah.
outnumbered for sure. For a while, I had the dog, and now we don't even have the dog, so it's just
I've got a buddy that I work with, or he used to be on my crew and is got transferred out, but super great guy. And it's the same thing, all house full of girls. And he had his last kid. He's probably been 2 years now. And he just knew this was the boy. He already had his man cave plans in his head for him and his son, and came back from the doctor with the news of another girl. And it just it's just funny because it's interesting. I don't know if this is the way, if you see the same thing too, but being on just even the size department that I am, probably 130 people, there are several people that I know of, and I'm sure there's several people that don't, that's the case. They have 2 or 3 or even more girls and their wife, and it's just crazy that I don't know what it is.
I don't either. I just had this inkling early on, even before we had a family, that I was going to be a girl dad. And honestly, I love it, man. I do. I love it so much. And it's funny because especially having three now, you always get the question, well, are you going to try for the boy? And honestly, for me, I don't need it. But so we'll talk a little bit about our journey there, because that was a little bit interesting as well. So
yeah.
My wife and I met when we were 7 years old. So we've gone to church together and grown up together pretty much since that time. My parents and her parents were best friends, and so we've just had that relationship for a long time now. We didn't start dating until our senior year of high school, but we've got this long-term thing going on, which I'm so grateful for. We got married back in 2008. And initially we were pregnant pretty early on in our marriage. And unfortunately we went through a miscarriage and a lot of struggles with infertility and stuff. And we got to the point where we were spending a lot of money on infertility treatments. And we kind of came to a crossroads where we could either spend tens of thousands going the route of infertility treatments, or we could go the route of adoption. And being together for so long, we had a lot of influences in our church of adoptions within our church, and we knew that we wanted to go down that road as well. We just didn't know how early on in our marriage, or when in the whole process of starting a family that would occur. So it was actually a really easy transition for us to move into the adoption realm. And so it was a several years long process, but we actually adopted our first child, which has been such a blessing and a joy. It's also come with some struggles as well. So for those who don't know me, I'm Caucasian. My wife is Caucasian, and we adopted an African-American girl. And there's a lot of there's some intricacies there that we haven't all sorted through. And we're still working towards, supporting her in every single way that we can. It's taken counseling. It's taken some incredibly difficult conversations that we didn't even know that we would have with an 8-year-old. And even earlier on than that, so many tears that you don't expect through a process like that. And roughly 2 weeks after we adopted our oldest, and she was 12 days old when we got her, but roughly 2 weeks later, we found out we were pregnant with our first biological child. So right now, Ella turns 8 here in a couple of days, but we have 2 7-year-olds and a 4-year-old. So we're so blessed in that way. And it's amazing the journey that God's taken us through all of that. And you hear all of these questions, especially early on, not so much anymore, but was it hard to feel that connection with your adopted child? And no, it wasn't at all. In fact, I had a harder time connecting with my second child than I did with my first, because she had to go to mom for all of her basic needs, it seemed like. And I had these 9 months together with Ella where it was just the two of us, and that was phenomenal. And so it's been just an incredible journey for us, and we're so blessed through it. And I'm so happy to have girls. Who knows if we're necessarily done? We've talked about adopting or doing foster care in the future. So the door's not closed on all of that, but I'm certainly happy with the 3 that I've got.
That's awesome. So your 4-year-old biological?
4-year-old is biological as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, Matt. I am somebody that has done the foster care thing. I fostered a couple boys for I believe 5 years or so, and adopted one of them. So we kind of share a little bit about that. I know you haven't experienced truly the foster side of it, which, man, that is definitely a challenge. I will say, anybody that has done that, it's challenging. And what's sad is, really the most challenging part is just dealing with all the behind the scenes stuff, the DHS type things and all that. But it's amazing life's story and life's journey and life's purpose, because I honestly still don't even know how that whole story played out for me. It was just a fluke thing that, we didn't even plan on doing fostering. We didn't have anything set up. We didn't do any classes. And, we started talking about an emergency situation that came up. And like 3 or 4 days later, we've got 2 kids in our house that aren't ours. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But, it's just amazing kind of the path that God's purpose for you. And that's something that, I kind of talked to you before we started recording. I love faith. I love family. I love those conversations. And it's great to talk to people who not only are fired up for the fire service, not only are trying to do good things for the fire service, but good people that put their family first and care about family. And so I just love that. And
Mhm.
it's so amazing to find so many people that are doing great things in both areas.
For sure. There's a lot of positive examples to turn to, and it's funny, the more people that you meet in the fire service, the more you realize how alike we are in our mentalities and the way that we approach things. And um, man, our stories are so similar in so many ways, and that's incredible. And you find that out through conversations like this. And
Yeah.
you hold people to certain standards in terms of your day to day at the job, and you realize that they're living it at home as well, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. The going back to kind of what we talked about earlier, that support and all that, how, like I said, basically out of the gate, you're everywhere. You're involved in a lot of training, a lot of conferences, a lot of things like that. How do you find the balance between all that and work? Has it been a struggle for you? Because honestly, just before you start, I've spoken lots and lots about that. Is a constant struggle for me. So I will admit that any day of the week. Is that something that you find difficult to kind of constantly watch over, or is it easy for you?
No, not easy in the least, and something that I would probably get a failing score at so many
Yeah.
times, I'll be honest. And what I've noticed is a lot of times, especially when I get home from the fire station, I'm just looking for the opportunity to decompress a little bit, and unfortunately that leads me to my phone, and then the phone, all my social network is fire stuff. That's all it is. And so if I scroll through a feed, all it's going to be is fire stuff.
Oh,
If you're not careful, it'd be so easy to just get lost in that for an hour, and
yep.
brushing off the family as soon as you step in the door. So I'm the first to admit that that's something that I struggle with in a huge way, and I'll blame it on the cell phone. It's all the cell phone's fault, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to take any
Oh
ownership
yeah.
of that at all, right?
Yeah.
No, it is something that I really I have to battle through in a lot of ways, and my wife calls me out on it probably more times than she should. And like you mentioned, I enjoy traveling. I enjoy going to these conferences because I get the opportunity to learn so much, and I get the opportunity to, be in community with these people who are so fired up and engaging, and people who drive me to do so much better. It's a measure of accountability for me in a lot of ways, and it's an opportunity to see growth also. And so I seek those opportunities in so many ways. And my wife continually reminds me, hey, you've looked at going to 3 different conferences in the next couple of months. What have you done to plan for
Yeah.
our family?
Yeah.
And it is hard because it'd be super easy for me at the beginning of the year to look at my list of vacation days and allocate all of those to traveling for fire stuff, and not leaving any behind for the family, and just assuming that I could take care of that with trades or whatever it may be. But the thing is where you spend those valuable vacation hours and stuff says a lot about what you're looking to do. And I'll be the first to admit that I've failed in a lot of ways, and for many years at finding that balance.
Yeah.
So it is something that I need that accountability for in a lot of ways from my wife. And I need people to tell me, hey, take a step back for a minute, engage, be here with the family when you're there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of basically the same story for me. And luckily, like you say, I have a wife that is not afraid to let me know, when priorities have become out of whack. And I very much appreciate that, because to be honest, I'm a struggling ADHD type personality. And I get on these kicks where it's like, that's all I want to do, whatever it is, if it's landscaping, if it's, writing an article, if it's, whatever. I get my mind focused on things, and then everything else takes a back seat. And so that is something that I definitely need, like you said, to kind of get checked on quite a bit. So, that's a common theme. And
Hmm.
it's people like us hopefully have somebody like that with them, that is not afraid to speak up and say, hey, it's time to bring it back. We're
Hmm.
still here too. And so that's, it's just an interesting thing that we have to deal with, working for a career that you love so much that you want to be involved with it away from when you're there, and you're proud of what you do. And it's a part of a bigger purpose than all of us. And so it's it's amazing how quickly you can lose yourself. I will say that, if you allow it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's hard because when you go to a conference or you sit in on a lecture or whatever form of education it is, those things can directly translate to how well you do the job. And all of us want to be good at the job. All of us want to say that we're the masters of our craft. And you become that through work. You become that through just a constant cycle of training and keeping fresh on your skills and stuff. And so you have that in the back of your mind that in order for me to be the best, I got to continue to put all of this effort and energy into it. And so yeah, it is this constant cycle of, okay, so there's more to life right now than just becoming the best at being a firefighter. Because like you said, yeah, absolutely, I get lost in it all the time. And sometimes I do pursue it a little bit more than I should. And I do have to get that reality check from my girls a lot of times, like, hey dad, will you play with us? Will you put down the phone? Will you,
Yeah.
stop reading that book? Whatever it is at the time. And yeah, you do get those gut check moments where like, oh yeah, I haven't hardly said a word to you in the last little bit since I've been home. So
Yeah. Yeah. Then, to make it worse for me personally, we live on a small farm. We've got a house that seems to always have renovations going on. We're always involved in some type of project. And so, man, that for, like I said, somebody with an ADHD type mentality, man, it is just it's almost like sensory overload sometimes. And I
mhm.
find myself not only getting caught up in, the fire service social media type stuff like that we both enjoy, but just home projects, sitting there doing things that you can quickly tell yourself, well, we're trying to create this space outside for us to enjoy, and that's why I'm spending time on it. Well, really, they just want time with you. They don't care where it is.
Mhm.
It doesn't require a play set or a cool whatever outside area. They just want to spend time with you. And I I have a hard time just figuring that out. And I don't know why. I constantly think to myself, this is the same lesson that you are trying to learn yesterday and last week and last month. They just want time. They just want to spend time with you. And so I I get it. I definitely understand.
For sure. For sure. Sometimes you got to realize that if the pipe isn't broken and flooding your basement, that the
Yeah.
project probably isn't worth
Yeah.
worth giving up that time that they're begging you for at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You mentioned earlier that you didn't know that you actually wanted to be a firefighter till after college, and that's probably another area that we're very similar in. I spent a few years in college mainly just to play baseball. I didn't really go to college, but after that, I did some pipeline construction work, and I was working with my dad, so I liked that part of it. But every other aspect of pipeline construction, I hated, and I knew that is not what I wanted to do, but I didn't really have a clue what it was, until I
Hmm.
was 24, and just kind of happened to come across some coworkers that were firefighters, and that's kind of what planted the seed. But another interesting thing is you hear these legacy firefighters, that their dad was a firefighter, their grandpa was a firefighter, and that's what they grew up in. And part of me thinks that would be so cool, and maybe even someday would want that on some of my kids to kind of pass that on. But it again, life's purpose brings you to where you're supposed to be. And so what kind of what led you to this thought?
Hmm. Well, I probably have the cheesiest route to the fire service ever. So, I mean, obviously, as a little kid, you had the fire station tours and you had the firefighters come into the classroom and show off the gear and the apparatus and stuff. And it was so cool as a little kid. And it was something that stuck with me, certainly. And I had a couple of friends whose fathers were firefighters. So there was a little bit of influence there, but I didn't have that family influence at all. I found out after I became a firefighter that I had a great great uncle who was the fire chief of my hometown, but those stories were never passed along. There wasn't
Yeah.
memorabilia around the house, anything like that. So I just didn't have that influence. And my parents really drove me towards going to college. They made it clear that they expected me to pursue an education and stuff like that, and I was okay with that route. And I went to college to get a finance degree thinking that I would do something business related. Ended up working for State Farm with that degree later on. But as I was graduating college, I was doing all of these interviews with different mutual companies and stuff like that, where they're like, man, we need you to take this test so that you can sell insurance, so that you can sell securities and all of these things. And the more I got into that realm, the more and more boring it sounded. And finally it came to the point where I was offered a job that would be this outside sales job, and I'd get the company car and all these things. And I just had to sit back for a moment and decide, is this what I really want? And it just happened to be at that same time where I was sorting through this job offer that my wife and I sat down and watched that old movie Fireproof. I don't know if you've
Oh
seen it.
yeah. Oh yeah.
But
Yep.
this is cheesy Christian stuff about firefighters, and all of these other people get these amazing messages about how to
Yeah.
get a better marriage out of it. But what I got
Mhm.
out of it was that firefighters look awesome, and that's exactly what I want to be. And found out that I had a cousin volunteering at the department that I started volunteering for, and started talking to him. I was actually late for the first PAT test that I was supposed to be there for. So all of these little things where if I was looking back today and a kid came into an interview late and then told me that he wanted to be a firefighter because he watched the movie Fireproof, I would kick him out of the room. But that was my route to the fire service, man. And literally from day one at that volunteer department, I was in love. I knew exactly what I wanted to do from that point forward, and I haven't looked back. I knew I wanted to be a career firefighter, and it just, I knew immediately that that's where I was supposed to be.
Yeah. So what would a 2021 insurance salesman, Jonathan Brumley, look like these days? Would he be a happy person?
I, you know, I I haven't been in a work situation where I truly could say that I hated the people that I was with, that I hated the stuff that I was doing. Um, there's was certainly jobs like Domino's, my first one, where it was trudgingly long, and I don't know why I put myself through that. But I feel like I give a dedicated effort to everything that I do. And even in the insurance realm, I knew that I wanted to be a firefighter. I was volunteering the whole time, but I was still pursuing, outside certifications and stuff like that. That's just the person that I feel like I want to be, somebody that people can rely on, somebody that is looking to do more, you know. And so, I would have a decent life being in an insurance, but I'm so glad that I'm not behind a desk and I'm actually getting to do more than telling people whether or not they can have a house policy.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's a pretty big gap in differences there between, fighting fire and sitting at a desk, okay, in policies and
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
that.
It's kind of funny. So my title when I worked for State Farm was a fire underwriter. So it's a fancy way of saying, yes or no on things like home insurance, townhomes, even boats and liability policies and stuff. And it was funny because in the territory that we covered, it was Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado. They're big wildfire exposures, and we were actually looking at that, and I found myself diving into that so much more because I wanted to be a firefighter, where what the everyday policies weren't all that exciting, but if I got to evaluate wildfire risk, that was a good day for me. And it was funny because at the same time I'd have my headphones in and the scanner on for the fire department and listening to the calls at the desk. That's just what I wanted to do, man. I did not want to be there for that reason, because I knew there was so much more out there for me.
Oh, you say it's cheesy, and it is definitely a funny story, but whatever brings you to where you're supposed to be, that's a cool deal. Everybody's got their own thing, and it's interesting to hear everybody's little take on kind of what brought them there. Sure. Mm-hmm. So you said in Houston you worked for some truck companies as well. Big engine guy now, very vocal about loving the engine. How did you feel about truck work? Is it something that you could have got into if you did it more, or you just think that the engine's where you're supposed to be?
No, I love truck work. I absolutely love truck work. And if you put me on a truck, I'm going to have the best day ever. Just like if you put me on an engine, I'm going to have the best day ever. It was just a setup in the fire department there in Houston where they rotated firefighters. So you didn't bid for an apparatus, you bid for a station. And so at the particular station I was at last, there was an engine, a ladder, an ambulance, and a chief. And the 5 firefighters assigned to that station had to rotate between all of those.
Oh, okay.
Aside from the chief's buggy, obviously. But in reality, I would spend 2 days on an engine, 2 days on a truck, 1 day on an ambulance. And I just like being a good firefighter. So I took plenty of classes early on where, I wanted to go learn how to vent roofs. I wanted to learn how to do forcible entry classes and all that. I think there was one point where I probably took like 5 or 6 forcible entry classes in a row when I traveled to conferences, learning from guys like Mike Heaney and Scott Kleinsmith out of Wichita. They were just phenomenal classes. Arthur Ashley. I love truck work. I do. But the reality is when it came down to it, for me, engine work just makes so much sense to me. And I'm able to dive into the nuts and bolts of it in ways that I just haven't been so far in truck work. And my stature may play a part in that, where, throwing 35-foot ladders by myself, like I so desperately want to, is difficult. And it's really, really hard. And it's funny, like you're talking about the whole journey through this. I didn't go into this saying I want to be an engine firefighter by any means. It was just something that I found kind of through happenstance, and really it was the mentors that I had along the way that kind of drove me towards that and brought me under their wing, and that's kind of what I fell into. But if I was at a conference next weekend venting roofs, with flames shooting out of it, I would be in my happy place just as much as I would be on the end of a nozzle, truly.
Yeah. For me, or for us, really, my department, we're lucky, and I don't know the statistic, but I would say that around America, it's a pretty common theme, just because of the lack of big apparatus like aerial apparatus a lot of places. But we do it all, basically. The engine, I'm on an engine. That's all we have, basically, an engine and a brush bumper at my station. But we are going to be doing forcible entry. We are going to be searching and things like that. Some of that, air quotes, truck work. And so I like that. I like having that kind of availability to work on those things as well, because like you said, I love it. I love nozzle work and moving hose lines around and doing things like that. But I really enjoy that forcible entry side as well. So it's it's good to kind of, broaden that out some, as opposed to some of the bigger cities to where, it's very, this is your job, that's their job, that type of thing. And
Hmm.
so it was interesting for you to say that about Houston. I would have thought that they are, you're either a truck person or an engine person. So that's kind of neat that they rotate like that.
People kind of fall into their niches there, and you may have some stations where a guy may pass up his engine day so he could be on the truck more, and that's kind
Yeah.
of up to the officer to decide if that's going to be the case or not. But the reality is you get very well-rounded firefighters that way, and it's
Yeah.
something that I'm incredibly grateful for, because I would much rather be well known as a well-rounded firefighter than somebody who's decent on the engine, but man, if we have to rope him into a truck, it's going to be the struggle bus.
Yeah.
I want to be an asset in whatever seat that I'm sitting in, and so I've really tried to take that mentality where I need to be well-rounded in all aspects. And it's funny, because if you looked in my locker at the station right now, I'd have a Maximus Rex and a 6-foot hook, which I'm passionate about the fire service, and not just limited to the engine necessarily, even though I do love the engine work so much.
Yeah. Yeah, that you talked about your kind of mentality of being able to really get into the details of that engine stuff a lot better. That's the quickest thing I can compare myself to that is like ropes and technical rescue stuff. My
Mm-hmm.
mind just does not comprehend that stuff. I could sit there and train all day on it, but tomorrow I would forget every bit of it, because I just don't get it. You know what I mean? I
Mm-hmm.
just can't think that way. But these other things that we're talking about, they just click as well, a lot better for me. So that's the another cool thing about the fire service is there's so many different things that you can be a part of, so many different areas that we have to be responsible for. And you know, I am good at a few things and terrible at a lot of others, but hopefully I'm with some people that are good at those things, and so
Absolutely.
we can just kind of play off each other a lot in those areas.
Yeah, yeah. I had a friend who left the Houston Fire Department and he went to Los Angeles, and he came back from his, probationary year talking to me and stuff, and he's telling me how many links are on the chainsaw, the pitch of the cutting edge and stuff like that, and that's awesome. I love that there are people that dive into the weeds, because we need people to do that. But that didn't excite me the same way that, rattling off a 275 psi fixed gallonage fog is roughly the same equivalent of a 150 at 50 fog. So it's valuable having those types of people in the positions that they are, and that guys are willing to dive into the weeds on the ropes. Guys are willing to dive into the weeds on the engine side. We need that for sure, and that makes us well-rounded. And I think the common thread is that we are all passionate, and it's okay that we're passionate about different things. Like I said, I want to be well-rounded, but I'll leave the subject matter expert stuff on the truck and the tech rescue to somebody else for the moment. Who knows what the rest of my career will hold, but for now I'm good with being where I'm at.
You mentioned your stature. You have called yourself a smaller individual, I would say. I would I would say that I'm pretty much in that same category. I don't have a lot of strength compared to the people I work with. And so that being the case, I know very well how important technique is. If
Absolutely.
you can't rely on strength to manhandle a hose around however you want it to, you better be good in technique. And just speak that out a little bit about kind of what you've learned as far as kind of that topic.
Well, I've definitely learned that there's a huge difference between good and bad technique.
Yeah.
So many of us think that just muscling through will work, and that if
Yeah.
we are muscling through, it's close enough. But the reality is that when you have somebody who is able to explain things in a way that open up your eyes to the technique side of things, it becomes a night and day difference, especially for those who do have the ability to just muscle through, because they realize how much less effort it's going to take when you're able to get the technique dialed in. And for me, the biggest eye opener was taking nozzle forward for the first time, where I was taught a certain way to move hose early on, and there wasn't a whole lot of instruction given to it other than just hold here and drag,
Yeah.
and taking that nozzle forward class for the first time, my eyes were opened, and I'm like, oh my goodness, where was this, the last 6 years of my career, 8 years of my career? This is what we needed from day one. And my ability to move hose around especially is so much better. And I know guys see it on the forcible entry side, on the ladder side as well, that if you go into it just trying to muscle through, you're gonna lose in a lot of ways. And if you get that lucky win, it's a lot of times a lucky win, or you're gassed at the end of a single task. And that's what technique really opens up the door for, is the ability to do so many more tasks on the fire ground than just the initial task that you're assigned. And that's what you want to be able to do, is win for the long run. It doesn't mean much if you were able to carry a ladder from board of the engine and put it up against the roof if you can't get up on the roof and cut the hole, get down, and possibly make a secondary search afterwards. Our citizens are counting on us to be able to be fit and be capable of doing so much more than just a single task on the fire ground, especially in those departments where, you may only have 8-10 people showing up on that scene. You have to be able to go through multiple bottles and get the job done, and technique is what opens up the door to do that. Technique is what opens up the door.
Yeah, I like what you said there about, being able to do more, more jobs, and being able to kind of spread out whatever, amount of energy and stamina that you have. And that's what that technique is going to help you with, because that, like you said, a lot of people don't have 40 people showing up on fires. You are going to be doing a lot of work. We had a big barn fire here at my volunteer department yesterday, and I wasn't able to help much. I came out for a little bit, but the amount of fire that this building had in it, it was ridiculous. And there were 2 people there at first, and I'm sure they were freaking worn out, but it is what it is. You got to make the best of it. But that being said, I love kind of getting into the details, and like kind of what you talked about. And before I get into that, this is something that a mutual friend of ours has kind of passed on to me, Justin Mann. And speaking of Justin Mann, he said that you're probably one of the nicest people he has ever known. So I'll
I
have to tell you
appreciate that, Justin, for sure. I do.
But he has passed that on to me about learning just the smallest, not teaching me how to hold a nozzle, but why, and what it does for you, and the benefits, and the getting into the details. And that has been really cool to kind of flip into a different gear as far as training and learning. Is that kind of, do you share that type of mentality?
Absolutely. I share that mentality. I'm okay with diving into the details of things. And in fact, I encourage it in many ways. And it pays off on the bigger scenes. I feel like we can get away with, a 1-room house fire, a small kitchen fire where it was just food on the stove, stuff like that. You get a bit away with, not caring so much about the job on those, but on the incidents where it really matters is where all of that time that you've spent diving into the nuts and bolts of your stretch, diving into how to hold the Halligan, how to get in through multiple locks, all of those things pay off on those big scenes. And I'm in a situation now that I haven't been in any time previously in my firefighting career, where I'm working in a downtown station with lots of larger buildings, standpipe equipped, some of them mid-rise, some of them high-rise, a lot of multi-families and stuff like that. And so it just takes a different brand of firefighting in that regard, and taking the time to dive into, okay, this is exactly how I'm going to hook up all of my appliances on the cabinet. I'm going to put my gate valve, then an elbow, then a pressure gauge, then I'm hooking up my 2.5. Like, there is a plan with the littlest things of just how things are going to get connected to the standpipe even before you dive into the stretch. And those things all pay dividends when a fire goes well. And even when things are chaotic, if you've taken the time to sort through, okay, this is exactly how I want to lay out my hose, this is exactly where I want my people positioned for this particular type of stretch, you see things accomplished in an incredible way. And I got to brag on my engine company a little bit for a second here. A couple of weeks ago, I was driving and we got dispatched by ourselves to a high-rise building in our first in territory. It just came in as a fire alarm, single alarm activation. So I went to the panel, the other three investigated, did our recon. This is the stairwell that we want. And we were able to see it's just a single smoke detector, so we weren't thinking much, but they still had every bit of gear with them. They still had all 4 hose packs that we would normally carry. They still had all of their tools. They still had the high-rise kit. Yep. And we were still going through the paces. They get to 6th floor. They didn't see any smoke or fire, but they did run into a lady who said, "Oh, wait, my apartment's on fire." "Which one?" "The one you're standing next to." And they're literally standing next to the fire apartment with no indication of smoke. The boss opens the door. Yeah, smoke all the way to the floor. And the 3 of them were able to, they called for, a full dispatch on a high-rise fire. And the 3 of them were able to make all their connections, finish the stretch, and put the fire out before the next arriving company was even on scene. And it doesn't just happen that way.
Yep.
It takes so much work and so much preparation and a willingness to dive into the weeds on that stuff, because I can't tell you how many, dozens upon dozens of times we've practiced our different stairwell stretches.
Yep.
And it pays off on a scene like that, where you recognize that, for some departments, a high-rise fire is going to take 3-4 hours and hundreds of people. And in this case, it was a small fire. So don't get me wrong. It wasn't more than, just like a mattress. But the thing is from the time of dispatch until every single other company was back in service was 40 minutes. And that just doesn't happen by mistake. And yeah. You see things pay off whenever you dedicate your time to your craft.
Yeah. Well, you say that it wasn't much of a fire and it was just a mattress or whatever, but what would have been if they're up there empty-handed, probably, maybe not even their full gear on, and they find that, then what?
Right.
Now they're freaking booking it down back to the truck to get all their stuff. Well, what is it by the time they get back up there? That's part of that conversation.
That's where we went.
Yeah.
That's where we went, because we were fully dressed. We were fully expecting a fire when we got up there, and sure enough, there was one. And that's where you separate yourselves from a good company and a bad company, is when even on the stuff that seems mundane, you're still dialed in and you're still expecting something bigger, even if it's not. It's so much easier to be at that level already than to try to escalate to match the incident. You're going to be so far behind, like you said, especially in this case, it was 6 stories of hiking stairs with all of their gear. So the reflex time on that's huge. We could have gotten beat to our own fire had that been the case, and how amazing does that feel?
Yeah. I mean, that's you think about it from just pulling up to a single story residence, the 30-foot setback, and you get caught with your pants down. Well, that's one thing, but you talking a 6th floor walk, like you just said, that's a big deal right there. And like you said, that's a huge separation of where your culture is. I'll kind of put it like that. And that's something that I've had to kind of tighten up with myself, being a station officer in years past. I have allowed the, just bunker pants to a automatic alarm, just kind of not being fully prepared. And so that's one area here recently that I have changed. We're going to be ready. We're going to be full gear. We're going to be ready for what comes if it comes. And so that's something I've had to work on, because I wasn't that person at first. And you see even a higher level of people setting up aerials on automatic alarms, people pulling lines on automatic alarms just to stretch with whatever you got. And I haven't got there yet, but that's definitely another step that I need to think about kind of doing for that practice. So there's definitely different levels of really getting it, I guess, as a crew and being on top of it.
Uh, and I'll be the first to admit that I've learned a lot of those lessons through complacency and
Oh
through
yeah.
getting bit in the past. And
Yep.
like I said, I could brag on my engine company for that last high rise fire, but we had one last summer where we were dispatched to it and crews arrived. They were doing their job. We were the fourth engine on scene, and I'm looking at 3 truck companies that had already beat us there. They're starting to get their aerials up in the air. And I looked at my boss and I said, hey, I'm not going to bring the Halligan on this one, thinking that we had all of these other companies ahead of us. There were already,
Yep.
7 on scene at that point. And we're hiking the stairs. We're getting to like floor 13 or 14. And we get reassigned to floor 7 because somebody reported a possible baby left in an apartment. And meanwhile, we have a flathead axe, and that's it to get inside of this apartment door on floor 7 because I was the knucklehead who left the tool behind, and we made it work using this tiny little pry bar and a flathead axe. But that was on me. That was my fault. Like, had that been something, I would have been the one who dropped the ball. And it's through lessons like that that I can now say, hey, we're never leaving our tools behind. We will always have a set of irons with us on this type of call. And I hate it that we have to make mistakes in order to do that, but sometimes that's what it takes. And hopefully we don't get bit with people's lives on the line, but it happens every day. And the more we can fight that complacency or that urge to take the easy route, the more we're going to win on those incidents where it's marginal.
Yeah. And like you say, you hope that you don't have to learn the lessons the hard way by making mistakes. I think it's Viscuso, I'm not sure. It basically says the best situations to learn lessons from are the other people's mistakes. And you sitting there saying that right now, that's I really appreciate that, because when we make mistakes, I feel like it's our responsibility to help others learn from that. It's so easy to look on social media and see all the good things and the wins and everything like that. But it's truly really a humbling process to put out the mistakes too, to tell people, hey, this is something that happened. We made a mistake. This is the consequences that came from it. Don't do this. Don't be like us. And I like those things because it shows you, and it shows everybody that, man, he messes up too. He's doing all these great things with nozzle work and teaching people all over the nation, but he's just a guy, and he
Oh,
makes
absolutely. I'm
he
just a
makes
guy.
mistakes too.
Yeah.
And so it's just good. It's good to hear things like that.
One thing that I wish I had done longer, but I have definitely started since I've been in Denver, is I document every fire. I write it down. I go over, the quick details of it, address, time, where it was at. But then I start a pros and cons list. Like, this is what, we did well as a company. This is how our stretch went, whatever it may be. And then these are my cons. Like, these are what I screwed up on.
Yeah.
Like, if you had watched me try to pull 100 feet of hose off on that last fire to hook up to the FDC real quick, it would have been a mess to watch. I sorted it out, thankfully, before anybody else showed up. But, those are the types of things that need to get cleaned up. I was in an acting position. I don't do that every day at work, but it's certainly something that I realized I needed some practice on, because things could have looked so much smoother. I didn't need to candy cane my lines, getting them both up to the FDC connection. The first time I could have sorted it out at the tailboard, but those are the types of mistakes that I document. and I write that down. And those are the things that I practice on back at the station on those days where I'm just not sure what I need to be doing. I have a list, this is where you failed in the past. This is where you need to improve. And since I've started doing that, man, it's been incredibly helpful. Where I do get to celebrate the wins that I have, but I also have something to look back on where I'm like, these are the places where you've struggled and where we need to make our improvements.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, this is something I've spoken on here a few times here lately, but like after incident reports or whatever you call them, everybody calls them something different. Man, that is such a crucial time to take advantage of those situations. It's not about, tearing people down or, making somebody look stupid because of a mistake. It's about learning from that stuff, stepping up and being humble and being responsible enough to help others learn from what you did. If you overpump something on scene and it kind of caused an issue, or if whatever, there's so many things that, every incident, even the ones that we could claim were good, a good smooth incident, there's something to learn from, and I think those situations have gotten a negative connotation. Like we call them critiques, and they're trying to get away from that word because it just has a negative connotation to it. And I get that people have been using them in a bad way or whatever has caused it to happen. But that is such a great opportunity for everybody to learn from. And I want those to be more used, I guess I'd say.
People have to have the willingness to admit their mistakes. And I don't know whose position it is necessarily to bring it out, but if that person's not willing to bring it out, I think an officer needs to step up and point it out, because for that to occur again and again and again is going to be unacceptable. We recognize that there is an issue here. Let's take care of it. Let's have a difficult conversation now so that we're not having really difficult conversations down the road. And it shouldn't be a big deal for somebody to say, hey, that stretch was garbage. I welcome somebody coming up to me and telling me that, because otherwise I might think I did a fantastic job. And
absolutely,
I may or may not have a helmet cam. That's open for discussion, but those are great opportunities to learn, to rewatch the time that it took you to mask up, to rewatch the time that it took you to make a stretch. And, the camera doesn't lie in those regards. So, to have those extra measures of accountability where, it's okay for somebody to come up and humble me today. Those are the opportunities for me to grow and to learn. And it's sad that we're kind of getting away from that in those after action reviews or whatever you want to call them, that, we can all, just wipe our hands of it in those situations where we all could improve in some form or fashion. And it's hard sometimes as a firefighter, a backstepper to step up and say something in those situations. But if it's not being addressed, maybe it takes a senior member, a senior firefighter to say, hey, let's make sure something is said about this so that all of us can improve down the road. And it's not in an effort to tear anybody down. It's not in an effort to make your company look better in any form or fashion, but it's in a way to make our department look good in the future, and our department to, provide the services that are expected of us. And we're not accomplishing that goal if we just assume that everybody's okay with what happened and brush it under the rug and not address those types of things. So hopefully moving forward, we can be okay with calling something a critique, because that's what we're there for. We're there to learn, and we're there to understand what went well and what didn't go well.
Yeah. And that's, it's a lot of it's delivery. You can address something in a way that is receptive and you can learn from it, or you can address it in a way that totally shuts somebody down and puts up a wall. And that that doesn't accomplish anything. So you definitely need to kind of focus on that more than anything, is just the way you state it, really. And it's a simple thing, but it's a big deal with all that.
Yeah, I mean, I just finished taking a fire officer class, and they say that the nonverbal communication is like 93% of your communication, right? And so, yeah, obviously, we want to be tactful. We want to approach it in a way that the person hearing it can actually receive it without putting up a wall right away. And granted, there's probably plenty of things that could be said one-on-one, not in front of the group.
Yeah.
And that's another way to handle it as well.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have to bring certain things up in front of the
Oh,
entire
yeah.
group, but it has to be addressed. It has
Yeah.
to be addressed in some form or fashion. And we can't just let things continue on and assume that, you know, we're all rock stars and we couldn't do any better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, kind of what you're talking about there is, if we're talking about something that is, so I'm a station officer and my firefighter just got his butt kicked by this door, could not get through the door. His technique was awful. Okay. That's a you and me conversation. We're gonna deal with that by ourselves. But, you know, you know, another situation is we pulled a pre-connect through a bunch of traffic and kind of got caught here because we didn't do it right. And just kind of different situations that we can learn from as a whole and kind of share that. And so, yeah, to go off of what you're saying, there's definitely a time and place for different ways of dealing with whatever we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully getting humbled by a door is something that you guys can laugh about, train on, and then move on, But, if we're just continually bombing the stretch over and over and over, that's a different conversation for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And, we've got plenty of situations that you could talk about, like if I'm the first in engine and I'm expecting the second engine to do something and they don't, that has to be sorted out,
Yeah.
and otherwise every other scene that we go to from that point forward, we're just going to struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. And something else that you mentioned a little bit ago, I want to go back to is, you're talking about stretching through these multi-story buildings and things like that, preparation, say it right, in preparation for, whatever is to come. And that's a big deal. And, speaking of my district that I'm at, nothing compared to downtown Denver. I would promise you that much. But we've got a few, multi-story apartments and, some retirement homes, some big buildings that we need to have an idea of how to handle when that comes. Because, man, if you don't prepare for at least kind of an idea of what you're going to do in different situations in something big like that, I can't imagine being put in a situation to where we arrive on scene of something that we have got to handle fire-wise, and I don't have a clue of really how to do it. I don't want to be that person. I will say that. And so just getting in there and kind of figuring out, okay, we tried this, we tried extending off a pre-connect that, it worked all right, but I think we can do something better. Okay, let's start with 2.5 and extend on, just trying different things, figuring out, what wings to stretch to. And it's so important to have a good idea of how to address those buildings and so that when something comes, you've got a base to start off of.
Absolutely. And there's no other way to do that than to get out into your district and explore a little bit.
Yep.
There's no other way to do it than to really pull hose lines through some of those buildings. You got to get out. You have to. There's no other way to accomplish our job appropriately than to be familiar with your district, be familiar with the types of buildings. Some districts are a little more forgiving where, maybe you have 3 or 4 exposures that you're really concerned about. Man, you can focus really hard on those 4 exposures and get the job done. Mine's not impossible by any means. It's just going to take some time. I've only been at my current assignment for about a year now. And so for me to know every single building in my first in that, is this standpipe equipped, 5 stories or greater, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
I'm just not, because there's so many just within my first 10, let alone what we would respond to on any given alarm. So what it comes down to then is building that specific knowledge base for those types of buildings. So maybe I don't know this particular building. This is the first time that I'm going in there, but what I do know is the capabilities of the attack package that I'm bringing with me.
Yeah.
And making sure that that attack package will do what it's supposed to in the broadest category of those buildings. So down in Houston, it was a little bit different because we had a lot of buildings that had exterior breezeways. So I might, do a coupling drop in those cases significantly more than I would where in Denver, they've got a lot more inclement weather in terms of cold and snow and all of that. So pretty much everything is center hallway.
Yeah.
So for me to do a coupling drop, I'm having to go to, adjacent rooms and try to either break out a hurricane window, or, I might get lucky and have a slider or something like that. But I don't have the same access that I did on those exterior breezeway buildings down in Houston. So the tactics have to change a little bit. But then I've also got buildings where it's a 6-story multifamily with 2 different wings, and it's not that far out of the realm of what so many people have in their districts. Just think of what like your Holiday Inn is. It could be 3 or 4 stories with maybe 20 rooms on each floor. That's kind of the layout that this is. And if I know that I'm going to that building, hey, that might be a pre-connect fire for me. We have a 300-foot line ready to go. And I know that in that particular building, all I need to know is the stairwell, and then I can reach the 6th floor in every part of that building. I just need to choose the right stairwell with 300 feet of hose. So that familiarity comes with getting out into the district and exploring. And there's a couple of other pieces of equipment that we carry with us, doing pre-plans and stuff like that. We have 200 feet of rope with knots tied at 50 feet for those buildings where we just can't drag hose through it. We also carry a measuring wheel to most of what we do. So we're required to do annual fire inspections on, I think we have a list of about 100 that my company accomplishes. And that comes with us on those types of things because we have to be in those places anyways. So why not take advantage of the recon that we can get ahead of time in order to better plan those things out? So my plan A is going to be different on those buildings that I've had the opportunity to go through and really explore. So where plan A on a building that I've never been in might be 4 packs of 2.5 with a high-rise kit. We're going off of the standpipe. Plan A on this other building is, hey, 300 pre-connect if we park at this door, if we choose this stairwell. So those are only learned through getting out and exploring and really diving in. And one thing that my company does really well is dedicating each day. We try to get out and get into at least one building every single day.
Yeah. That something to kind of correlate with what you're saying there is Sean Duffy, Pablo Jenner with Builder Culture, super search people, great program. They talk about knowing what you can move, as far as weight, okay, I know I can move a 300-pound person or whatever your number is, just so you have that idea in your head. And that, as you're talking, that kind of jumped in my head of kind of basically a comparison of what you're saying. You got to know what 200 feet is going to reach, or 300, or whatever you have. You got to know that. And like you said, you're not going to know that unless you do it, unless you either stretch or, use the rope or the wheel or whatever you use. But to sit there and kind of to guesstimate, man, you might get close, but you also might get yourself in a bad spot because you were 20 feet short or whatever. And so that's, I like that comparison, because those are both really good things to kind of to think about, and getting out and doing that. We have both talked about, you're not going to prepare for everything. My crew has a playbook, of different writing assignments, basically, for different situations, different buildings, so and so. Does that take care of everything? No, but that gives us a base to start with. And when audibles need to be called, that's all I have to focus on is that audible. I don't have to go through every single thing. And that the funny thing about that is every time we come to one of these buildings and try something else or to do what we did last time, it's almost like we figure out a different way to do it even better. And it's just,
Mhm.
it's continually evolving.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, just to use an example, there's a big argument in the standpipe world of like what size hose that you even need to bring in, you know? And so for me, our company uses 2.5 because we know that that's going to give us the broadest range of opportunities to win.
Yeah.
We know that we've got buildings in our territory that, you know, are older, that have standards that are older as well. And then we have buildings that are newer. So could we get away with using, you know, a 2-inch hose or 1 3/4 hose? We might be able to, but the reality is talking about that reflex time on that fire that we had the other day. Like if we choose wrong in this situation and we can't do that, how much longer is it going to take for us to go back and get
Yeah.
the hose that's going to be right? And it's kind of the same thing with a lot of it. So if it's a forcible entry example, I may carry my Halligan with me to so many different doors that I could just get in with a shove knife. Now, yeah, shove knife is a great option for those, but if I can't, I got to have the
Yeah.
ability to escalate and to meet the situation. So, yeah, knowing the capabilities of your company, whether it's the stretch or, you know, how many people it's going to take to accomplish some of these things, that's all super valuable, and that's all learned through work. We do a drill every single Sunday that I actually hate, but I love at the same time. Uh, just call it the hose stretch. And what we do is we hook up 200 feet of 2.5 to a fire hydrant, and the goal is to we extend it out to an alleyway that's behind the station. It's about 130 feet to get to that alleyway. We have to flow. Before that, we have to flow again at the alley, and then we make a corner, go down the alley, and the time doesn't stop for that person until the 200 feet of hose is all the way stretched out. And so, is there a fireground application for one person pulling 200 feet of 2.5 by themselves uphill, down an alley, around corners? No, there's not. But the reality is that gets you used to work. It gets you
Yeah.
used to the technique side of things where, you know, when your brain is going haywire right now because you just want to give up, you still have to lay the hose a certain way to be advantageous, you know, and it's just a fun drill to judge where you're at today, you
Yeah.
know. Every single time we're trying to beat that time clock, you know, so that we get a better time. And it's funny because we get a ton of probationaries at our fire station, you know, and you want to beat the probie. But for me personally, I get beat by probies all the time, you know, because, you know, I'm just not this huge dude. But the goal is to be better today than,
Yeah.
you know, I was last time. And, you know, knowing my capabilities with that, I know that with charge 2.5, I can really only move about 80 feet in a straight line. I had one probationary where I watched him pull 140 feet before he ever had to stop and go back and pull slack for himself. That's phenomenal and mind
Yeah.
blowing to me because it was so hard for me to just do 80. But now, if I'm in a center hallway on a high rise, I know that if I look back and I'm getting close to, you know, moving past
Yep.
that 50-foot coupling, I got to be looking to manage that pinch point and going back and getting more hose pretty quickly. Those are things that I learned.
Yeah.
So am I going to be tasked with, you know, moving 200 feet of 2.5 by myself? Absolutely not. But I'm actually preparing myself in a huge way later on down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. That, man, that's good stuff right there. Just knowing your capabilities. And, you know, I mentioned the, the weight that you could drag out if you were encountered a big victim. Because, you know, all of these things, it helps you prepare so well. If we're going to that example of the dragging the victim out, if you see somebody and you could guesstimate pretty close what they weigh, if that is something that you know is above your number, you know right away to call. If
Mm-hmm.
it's somebody that's well below, then you're going to get on and you're going to start moving. Or, you know, if it's even close, you're going to at least try. But to have that idea in your mind of, whoa, I don't, that's above what I can do. I got a call right now. Well, that's instantly going to save you time right there. And you wouldn't know that if you weren't trained and prepared. And I love that example of you talking about pulling 5 inch or 2.5 and knowing your number that you can pull. All these things, they don't happen by going out and flowing water once every 6 months or, all that. It comes from getting involved. It comes from getting into those weeds that we talked about and learning that details. And that's really where you start getting to that next level of becoming a good firefighter. I just love that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes a difference for people's lives, and we gotta act like that's really what's going on, because it may not happen every day, but it will happen. It absolutely will happen. So, if I encounter that 400 pounder, I know that I'm not going to be doing this Denver drill style,
Oh yeah.
bailout where I'm taking them out a window. Instead, hey, I'm on the radio. Let's do a window to door conversion on this one, because it's not going to happen that I'm going to be able to drag this person, 70 feet through this house around all these turns, or, even heave them up through a window. Like, we got to make some changes to the plan, and knowing those limitations and capabilities is definitely the step that needs to be done ahead of time.
Yeah. So a lot of what you're doing is 2.5 involved. You're doing a lot of classes and things involved with the 2.5. How would you say that you have kind of become the I'll say poster child for the 2.5 lied? How did that come about?
So that only came about because Brian Brush has stepped aside. He's kind of left that to a few of us to kind of take on his message, and full credit goes to him in that regard. And really, that's kind of what ignited my passion early on, was learning from Brian. And his willingness to answer my questions and put up with me as I pestered over and over and over, trying to learn this stuff. Because it was so eye-opening. Going back to that technique conversation, my initial experiences with 2.5 were me just being on the struggle bus with very little insight into how things are actually done. And so for me to keep a 2.5 open for anything more than about 20 seconds just was too much of an ask without having that baseline knowledge. And so then getting the proper instruction and really dialing that in, I recognize that, it doesn't have to be that way. And the capabilities that we have on that line are so huge. And kind of going back to that conversation of me being a smaller guy, I think I'm a pretty good example of what can be done. Because it wouldn't mean nearly as much if I was, 250 pounds and 6'4" to somebody who's my size to say, hey, this thing is easy, it's no big deal, right? But if I'm able to show, the technique and just show that, hey, you guys are able to do so much more than you think you're capable of, then that's a huge win. And so, it's something that light bulb went off in my head, and I love passing that along to other people. So that's kind of how I fell into that, was just recognizing how big of a difference that was for me, and being able to help other people do the same. It just really ignited my passion in that regard. So all the credit goes to Brian, and the time that he spent with me and getting that dialed in. And of course, I mentioned nozzle forward as well. Just honing in that technique really paid dividends. And I'm just trying to pass along the information that was given to me.
Yeah. I think when you bring up 2.5 and stuff like that, as far as when you're younger and newer in the fire service, I think that you have to bring up the term training scars for most of us. 2.5 was a source of almost like a test for you if you're newer, to see what you can hold on to. It basically just a hazing almost thing for a lot of people. And with that term training scars, it just puts that negative connotation in your mind throughout your career until or unless you get involved in some of this stuff like you're talking about, and you realize that it's not what they put me through, or it's not what I heard, or anything like that. And like you said, man, the uh the ways that it can be used and the benefits of it in different situations is so great. We do you see a lot of kind of pushback on from different individuals as far as just not wanting to let that mentality go?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the way we've always done it mentality for
Yeah.
sure. And it's kind of funny working for a bigger fire department. I expected that, um, and this is going back to my last department. I expected that because we had the staffing, we would use the bigger line significantly more than what we did. But what I realized is that was more of an excuse to use smaller lines because we could throw so many more smaller lines at the fire.
Yeah.
So if we didn't win with the first one, we could throw 4 more at it without
Yeah.
any issue because the manpower was there to do it. But the reality is if we had chosen 1 or 2 lines correctly right from the get-go,
Yeah.
there would have been absolutely no need for the other lines. And so, a lot of times the pushback is tank size, is manpower, all these things. And so I feel like my experience having gone through the volunteer ranks, having worked for a department of 15 all the way up to some of these larger, I try to bring that perspective in that, hey, I recognize that this piece of information is valuable regardless of the fire department that you're working for, because I can show 1 and 2 people how to get a 2.5 into service flowing large volumes of water onto a fire. Now, are they going to be incredibly mobile with it? Absolutely not. That's just not the reality of that line. But it can get you started, and then it can get that fire back into the wheelhouse where, hey, maybe we can knock this back to the point where we can stretch an 1.75 inch dry and get that one in place to mop up whatever is left after we've gotten this huge knock on the fire. So there is a ton of pushback for multiple reasons, but what I found more often than not, if people are willing to listen, if people are willing to give this thing a shot, they recognize that, hey, there is a place for this in my fire department. And I don't go at it from the perspective that, hey, you've been doing it wrong, and hey, you should be pulling the 2.5 on every single fire, because the reality is that's never the case.
Yeah.
The reality is that our smaller lines are doing the vast majority of the work, and they always will do the vast majority of the work. But what I don't want to happen is for you to get caught in those situations where you're going to do so much better off with the bigger line right from the get-go, and then scale things back like we talked about. It's like you said, putting on your gear. We have the opportunity to just put our bunker pants on, but if we can put the full set of PPE on right from the get-go and then scale things back, then we're in a much better spot than if we have to escalate.
Yeah. And there's lots of good videos, and I think you might even have a few here in the recent past of that example, a crew getting out, pulling that big line, punching it right in the face really quick, and then they're in really good shape to pull the smaller line and get the rest of it out. And like that mentality that you're talking about just if 1 isn't working, pull 2. If 2's not working, let's get a 3rd line on it. And that I get it, and there is a lot of this is how we've done it type stuff associated with that. But if you see the difference between somebody pulling a 2.5 and for just 45 seconds or a minute, just hitting it hard, and the difference between that and people pulling 2 different lines at 2 different spots, and is such a big difference. And hopefully, over time, some of that will just continue to change.
Absolutely. We carry these pieces of equipment on our rig for a specific reason, and that reason's not just to meet ISO requirements. The reason is because it's been tried and true, and people who have come before us have recognized the value in it. Talking to some guys in the past, Houston used to pull 2.5 all the time. They had stack tips on it, and that was culturally something that they did, and we just kind of got away from that at that fire department. Now, where I'm at now, I'd say that it's pulled more than any other fire department that I've worked for previously, but we're devaluing our abilities, and we're devaluing the equipment and the apparatus that we have when we're not using it to its full capabilities. We really are. And this is just a lot of what I teach is hopefully to kind of bring that to light and just to get people comfortable with it. And I've started teaching a class that I call bringing back the medium diameter hose line, because I don't want to necessarily just limit it to 2.5, because even in the last, I would say 5 years, hoses have evolved in such a dramatic way where, you know, we used to just call everything 2.5. It wasn't necessarily always the case, but the reality is now is we have probably 10 different hose sizes, depending on the manufacturer, between 2-inch and 2.88 inches in hose diameter. So my goal isn't necessarily to convert everybody to a particular size hose line, but just get them comfortable using a bigger line and get them comfortable recognizing the situations where one size may work better than another, and not being afraid to pull it off, because we don't want to get ourselves in a situation where we're relying on 160 gallons a minute to solve all of our problems.
Yeah, that, you know, it's just it's a process like everything else, and especially in the fire service, there's so much out there that we need to know. There's so much out there that we are responsible for, and at the same time, there's so many tools and techniques and skills that we can handle that, and hopefully we're approaching those things with an open mind of, you know, you don't know everything, and being humble enough to admit that, and, you know, just being open-minded and taking that information in, and seeing if there's better ways to do things. And that's something we got to continue to kind of be open to, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate your time very much. I enjoy kind of bouncing around between, like we kind of talked about, family and fire and everything in between. Do you have anything to say before we wrap it up?
No, I just appreciate your time, man. Thanks for reaching out. Love having conversations about this. People are welcome to reach out to me as well, and we can chat about any one of these topics, you know, whether it's faith, whether it's family, whether it's fire. You know, it seems like those are the big three topics for all firefighters, whether or not they want to admit it. You know, we're very well-rounded people as a whole, and it takes all of those things to be well-rounded, for sure.
Yeah. So tell us what you got coming up, and like you said, if anybody is wanting to contact you, how they do that.
So the easiest way to contact me is probably through Facebook, on Facebook Messenger. That's the only real social media that I focus a lot on. I do have an Instagram, but I pretty much dedicate that one all to hobby of restoring leather fire helmets. But yeah, Facebook, or my phone number is 970-405-8963. Just shoot me a text or something, and I'll try to get back to you, and we'll have a conversation. As far as getting out and teaching, I've got a few things going on this year. One big one coming up in Kentucky here in a couple of weeks. I'm bringing out some really good friends, Adam Mayers, Jay Bonifield, and Gary Lane. So that's coming up. There are still a few spots for that. I'll be at Lake of the Ozarks. And then if the FDIC ever happens, I'll be at that one too. But yeah, I've been blessed in incredible ways, you know, to get out and do some of this teaching and getting to meet all of these people. And this year has been especially so. It seems like 2020 just got pushed back into 2021.
Yeah.
Which is still pretty cool that you know, I get to get out and do this stuff, because, you know, like I said, it's a measure of accountability for me to stay up on my game. And it's a way for me to meet and to learn from people who I wouldn't have the opportunity to do so otherwise. So yeah, a couple of conferences coming up. I'll post them on my social media if you guys are interested. But yeah, phone or email.
Sounds great. Again, I appreciate it. Look forward to getting to know you here in July at the lake and meeting you in person. And so be a good time. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. And everybody out there, I want to thank you as well for spending some time with us Also want to say thanks to Woods Force Entry Door Kits for their sponsorship of the program and making it all possible. And until next week, stay humble and do work. Thank you.